Augustine commentary on the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 11 to 13, following. We have seen who the hireling is also. But the devil is the wolf. And what was said of the hireling? When he sees the wolf coming, he flees. But the sheep are not his own, and he cares not for the sheep. Was the Apostle Paul such an one? Certainly not. Was Peter such a one? Far from it. Was such the character of the other apostles, save Judas, the son of perdition? Surely not. Were they shepherds then? Certainly they were. And how is there one shepherd? I have already said they were shepherds, because members of the shepherd. In that head they rejoiced. Under that head they were in harmony together. With one spirit they lived in the bond of one body, and therefore belonged all of them to the one shepherd. If then they were shepherds and not hirelings, wherefore fled they when suffering persecution? Explain it to us, O Lord. In an epistle I have seen Paul fleeing. He was let down by the wall in a basket to escape the hands of his persecutors. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 33. Had he then no care of the sheep whom he thus abandoned at the approach of the wolf? Clearly he had, but he commanded them by his prayers to the shepherd who was sitting in heaven. And for their advantage he preserved himself by flight, as he says in a certain place, "To abide in the flesh is needful for you." Philippians chapter 1, verse 24. For all had heard from the shepherd himself, "If they persecute you in one city, flee you in another." Matthew chapter 10, verse 23. May the Lord be pleased to explain to us this point. Lord, you said to those whom you did certainly wish to be faithful shepherds, and whom you did form into your own members, if they persecute you, flee. Do you then injustice to them when you blame the hirelings who flee when they see the wolf coming? We ask you to tell us what meaning lies hid in the depth of the question. Let us knock, and the keeper of the door, which is Christ, will be here to reveal himself. Who is the hireling that sees the wolf coming and flees? He that seeks his own, not the things which are Jesus Christ's. He is one that does not venture plainly to rebuke an offender. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 20. Look, someone or other has sinned, grievously sinned. He ought to be rebuked, to be excommunicated. But once excommunicated, he will turn into an enemy, hatch plots, and do all the injury he can. At present, he who seeks his own, not the things that are Jesus Christ's, in order not to lose what he follows after, the advantages of human friendship, and incur the annoyances of human enmity, keeps quiet and does not administer rebuke. See, the wolf has caught a sheep by the throat. The devil has enticed the believer into adultery. You hold your peace. You utter no reproof. O hireling, you have seen the wolf coming and have fled. Perhaps he answers and says, "See, I am here, I have not fled." You have fled because you have been silent. You have been silent because you have been afraid. The flight of the mind is fear. You stood with your body, you fled in your spirit, which was not the conduct of him who said, "Though I be absent in the flesh, yet am I with you in the spirit." Colossians chapter 2 verse 5. For how did he flee in spirit, who, though absent in the flesh, yet in his letters reproved of the fornicators? Our affections are the motions of our minds. Joy is expansion of the mind, sorrow, contraction of the mind, desire, a forward movement of the mind, and fear, the flight of the mind. For you are expanded in mind when you are glad, contracted in mind when you are in trouble. You move forward in mind when you have an earnest desire, and you flee in mind when you are afraid. This then is how the hireling is said to flee at the sight of the wolf. Why? Because he cares not for the sheep. Why cares he not for the sheep? Because he is an hireling. What is that? He is an hireling? He seeks a temporal reward, and shall not dwell in the house forever. There are still some things here to be inquired about and discussed with you, but it is not prudent to burden you. For we are ministering the Lord's food to our fellow servants. We feed as sheep in the Lord's pastures and are fed together. And just as we must not withhold what is needful, so our weak hearts are not to be overcharged with the abundance of provisions. Let it not then annoy your charity that I do not take up today all that I think is still here to be discussed. But the same lesson will, in the Lord's name, be read over to us again on the preaching days, and be with his help more carefully considered.